Picture this: a steel-gray sky choked with the silhouette of something impossible. A ship the size of a continent hangs above Earth, its shadow swallowing cities whole. The air crackles with the hum of weapons primed to burn our world to ash. This is the Invictus, flagship of the Zorathian Dominion, and its Admiral Krell doesn't ask for surrender. He demands it: kneel or be erased. His voice booms across every screen, every radio, every terrified heartbeat on the planet. Humanity's fate dangles by a thread until one man steps forward. Not a soldier, not a general, a diplomat. Elias Vance walks up to the podium with a smirk and a briefcase, and when he clicks it open, the galaxy's most ruthless warlord gets an offer he never saw coming. Let's negotiate. I brought cake. This isn't just a first contact story. This is human diplomacy at its most audacious, a dance on the edge of annihilation where the weapons aren't missiles, but wit, where the battleground is a negotiation table strewn with plates of chocolate ganache and raspberry filling. How do you stare down an empire that views you as insects? You don't grovel, you don't beg, you distract them with something so absurd, so human, it short-circuits their logic. Because while the Zorathians came expecting screams, Elias serves them red velvet, and in that moment the rules of power flip upside down. What unfolds isn't just a fight for survival, it's a masterclass in turning weakness into strength. The Zorathians have death rays, we have dessert, they have armadas, we have recipes, and as Admiral Krell's troops shift uneasily, torn between protocol and the scent of vanilla frosting, you realize this is humanity's secret weapon. Not our warships, our weirdness, our stubborn refusal to play by the galaxy's rules, so buckle in. By the time this story ends, you'll never look at a birthday cake the same way again, because sometimes the surest path to peace starts with a threat and ends with a fork. The tension in the room is thicker than the frosting on that cake. Krell's armored fingers flex, his claws glinting under the harsh lights of the Invictus command chamber. Around him, Zorathian officers shift in their battle harnesses, their slit pupils locked onto the dessert like it's some kind of trap, because to them it is. Their entire culture is built on dominance, strength measured in shattered spines and scorched planets. And here stands Elias, a soft-skinned human, offering sugar and flour as if it's a weapon. Krell's voice is a gravel-edged sneer. Your pitiful species mocks us with pastries. Elias doesn't flinch. He leans in, sliding the plate closer. You conquer worlds, Admiral. But tell me, when was the last time your victories tasted like this? The challenge hangs in the air. For a heartbeat, the Zorathians are paralyzed by cultural vertigo. Violence they understand, but hospitality, pleasure as a power move, it's alien in ways their translators can't decode. Then, with a growl, Krell stabs his claw into the cake. The moment the rich, dark chocolate hits his tongue, his pupils dilate, his dorsal spines, rigid with aggression, slacken just a fraction. Across the room, warriors exchange glances. Their species has no concept of dessert, only rations, only fuel for war. That's when the genius of Elias' gamble becomes clear. Humans didn't evolve as apex predators. We outsmarted them, and nothing disarms a conqueror faster than the sudden, humbling realization that the universe contains joys they've never imagined. With every bite, Krell's certainty fractures. His soldiers, conditioned to view weakness as a flaw, now watch their admiral hesitate before reaching for a second slice. The entire Zorathian chain of command is suffering a collective existential crisis, because if these frail, squishy humans have unlocked delights beyond war, what else have they missed? And just like that, the balance of power tilts, not with a bomb but with buttercream. Krell's claws dig into the table, carving furrows into the metal as his pride wars against the scent of sugar lingering in the air. Enough games, he snarls, mandibles twitching. Your world bows today or burns tonight. The ultimatum echoes like a death knell, but Elias doesn't reach for the panic button. Instead, he taps his wristpad and a hologram blooms above the cake plate, a star map, pulsing with crimson warnings over a desiccated world, Zorath Prime. The image shifts to cracked farmlands, skeletal children scrounging in ration lines, warships docked in orbit while granaries stand empty. Elias lets the silence stretch. Then, softly, your war machine eats everything, doesn't it, even your future? The dossier he slides across the table isn't a threat. It's a ledger. Crop yields plummeting, famine spreading faster than conquests. The Zorathians measure strength in fleets, but their people are starving behind the propaganda. Krell's spines flare, yet his eyes linger on the data. Elias presses the advantage. We've studied your soil, your atmosphere. We can terraform your dead zones, teach you to farm like we did when we outgrew war. He nudges the cake closer. Or you can keep playing emperor over graveyards, your call. The clink of a fork hitting the plate is deafening. One of Krell's junior officers, a scarred veteran with hollow cheeks, has taken a second slice without permission. The Admiral turns, rage simmering, but the warrior doesn't cringe. He meets Krell's gaze and says what no Zorathian has ever dared. "Sir, my sister's pups, they're eating bark in the capital slums." The rebellion in those words is quieter than a plasma blast, but it cracks Krell's certainty wider than any human weapon could. Elias doesn't smile. Doesn't gloat, he just pours a cup of coffee, black, steaming, and pushes it toward the Admiral. "We've got 12 freighters of grain docked at Luna," he murmurs. First shipments free, the unspoken math hangs between them. The Dominion could glass Earth and doom their own species to slow death by hunger. Krell's claws retract. For the first time in his life, the Conqueror realizes the galaxy isn't divided into strong and weak, just those who adapt and those who starve. The silence shatters like glass when Lieutenant Vex slams his gauntlet onto the table. Frosting flies a crimson smear across his battle-worn armor. Enough. His voice isn't just anger, it's hunger, the kind that gnaws deeper than empty stomachs. "We burn worlds while our children chew on ration packs. You call this strength?" Around him, other warriors tense, their dorsal spines flickering in agitation. One by one, their eyes dart to the half-eaten cake, then to Krell's sidearm. The Admiral's grip tightens, but his trigger finger hesitates because rebellion isn't erupting over treason. It's erupting over tres leches. Elias watches the fracture line spread with the precision of a surgeon. He doesn't cheer, doesn't provoke. He simply picks up a clean fork and slides it toward Vex. "Funny thing about joy," he muses. "Once you taste it, you start wondering what else you've been missing." The lieutenant's mandibles twitch as he takes the utensil, an alien gesture, awkward but deliberate. His next words aren't for the human, they're for Krell. "Admiral, the Invictus crew hasn't had fresh fruit in 7 cycles. Our hydroponics failed after the Andari campaign." Command said, his voice cracks. "Victory would feed us." Krell's snarl is pure instinct. "Discipline is our sustenance," but the roar lacks its usual weight. Behind him, a medic, her carapace still streaked with combat gel, reaches for a slice. When Krell whirls to face her, she doesn't cower. She holds his gaze and takes a bite. The sound she makes isn't words, it's a whimper, a noise no Zorathian soldier would ever dare utter, and that's when Elias strikes the final blow. "Your people don't need more war, Admiral. They need bakers." He taps his wristpad again. The hologram shifts blueprints for agricultural domes, irrigation schematics, a dozen solutions the Dominion's war-focused science never considered. "We'll teach you how to grow wheat instead of welding dreadnoughts, how to ferment yeast instead of fission cores." A pause. "Or you can execute your crew for the crime of wanting seconds." The word hangs in the air like a detonation countdown, because Krell isn't just facing mutiny. He's facing a truth his empire has buried under mountains of corpses conquest can't nourish. And as Vex licks chocolate from his claws, the Admiral's finger finally loosens on the trigger, not in surrender, in something far more dangerous, doubt. The screen flickers to life, filling the Invictus command chamber with the warm glow of Earth's bakery's flour-dusted counters, ovens puffing steam, rows of golden loaves fresh from the heat. But it's the smaller moments that gut-punch the Zorathians. A grandmother laughing as she kneads dough, street vendors handing out pastries to strangers, a toddler wobbling toward a towering alien scout with a muffin clutched in sticky fingers. The scout's armored fingers twitch, his instinct screaming to bat the offering away, until the scent hits him: honey, vanilla, something his species has no word for. His mandibles part just slightly, and in that fleeting hesitation, the feed cuts to another city, another bakery, another child. Elias doesn't smirk, doesn't gloat. He lets the footage speak for itself, a looping reel of Earth's quiet defiance. We don't just survive, we bake. This is one planet, he says quietly. We have thousands. Krell's claws flex, but his gaze lingers on a shot of a Zorathian patrol unit, stone-faced warriors in full battle regalia, being offered a tray of cinnamon rolls by a human school choir. The aliens don't take them, but they don't refuse either. Their armor is built to deflect plasma fire, not kindness. The Admiral's voice is hoarse. Your factories make these. Elias shakes his head. Not factories, homes, streets, every corner of this planet. He zooms in on a single frame, the scout, his battle-scarred claws dwarfing the muffin, staring at it like it's a puzzle he can't solve. Your people conquer empty ruins, Krell, but you've never tasted a world that wants to feed you. The unspoken truth hums louder than engines. The Dominion's empire stretches across stars, yet not a single world has ever greeted them with anything but screams. Then the feed glitches, a new image sears into focus. Zorath Prime's central square, where a human relief worker in a flour-smudged apron passes out bread to a line of gaunt-faced civilians. The crowd's spines are bent, not in submission but hope. Krell's breath catches. That's when Elias lands the killing stroke. Your warlords told you hunger makes you strong. But strength, he taps the screen, freezing on a child human and Zorathian splitting a cookie in half. This is how empires outlast the stars. The Admiral's claws retract with a click. Not in surrender, in revelation. Krell's command thunders through the chamber like a detonation. Seize him. Armored hands clamp around Elias' arms, wrenching him backward, but the human's grin never falters. Just as the Admiral's claws unsheath for the kill, his science officer lurches forward, data scrolling across her visor. Wait, her voice is a blade slicing through the rage. Scans confirm it. Their food contains proteins our replicators can't synthesize. Admiral, this could end the famine. The words land like a grenade. Every Zorathian on the bridge stiffens. Krell's spines flare, his gaze darting between Elias and the half-eaten cake as if it's a live bomb. Elias tilts his head, his smile turning sharp. Or, he murmurs, that slice could have been laced with a biotoxin that melts your nervous system in 6 seconds. The room goes corpse still. Krell's trigger finger twitches, his barrel pressing into Elias' temple. The human doesn't blink. We did bake it special for you. A beat of perfect silence, then Elias laughs, warm and easy. Lie, but the offer's real. Chaos erupts. Warriors recoil from the dessert like it's radioactive. The science officer snatches a scanner, frantically recalibrating it, while Vex slams a fist into the wall, hissing, "You dare poison us." Elias shrugs, the picture of calm. "You dare starve your people." His gaze locks onto Krell, unflinching. "Here's the math, Admiral. Option 1, you glass Earth, and your species eats another generation of sawdust rations. Option 2, he nods to the cake. You take the recipe, the real one. The bridge trembles with the weight of that choice, not just between war and peace, but between pride and survival. Krell's mandibles quiver, his warrior's eyes burning into him. For the first time in Dominion history, a conqueror hesitates not because of fear, but because of flour. And in that hesitation, the galaxy holds its breath. The tasting protocol begins with the precision of a military operation, because that's exactly what it is. 12 Zorathian warships hover in geosync, their plasma arrays trained on Earth's largest cities, while below, kitchens in Paris, Mumbai, and New Orleans scramble under armed guard. Krell's terms are simple. Every dish prepared for his officers must also be served to human volunteers first, live streamed to the Invictus bridge. One tremor, one gasp, the Admiral snarls, his claws denting the table, and we erase your continent. Elias doesn't flinch. He turns to the nearest camera and grins. Chefs, let's make them believe in butter. What follows isn't diplomacy, it's theater. A 3-star Michelin chef in Lyon whips up a soufflé so light it defies gravity, then hands the first bite to a scowling Zorathian commando. The alien's armored fingers crush the delicate crust, his nostrils flaring at the burst of vanilla and citrus. The feed catches the exact moment his pupils dilate, a biological tell no warlord can fake. In Mumbai, a street vendor fries jail in sizzling oil, its syrup glistening like liquid gold. The Zorathian medic assigned to monitor it nearly breaks protocol when she licks the drizzle from her claws, her spines rippling in involuntary delight. But the real coup happens in New Orleans. A jazz band plays as a Zorathian battle mech looms over a gumbo pot, its sensors scanning for toxins, while the chef, a grandmother in a floral apron, stirs the roux with a wooden spoon. "Honey," she drawls, spooning a sample into the mech's testing chamber. "If I wanted y'all dead, I'd use my ex-husband's chili recipe." The bridge crew's laughter cracks the tension like a creme brulee's caramelized shell. Krell watches, stone-faced, as his warriors fumble with chopsticks, slurp ramen broth, and in one unforgettable clip attempt to share a single strand of spaghetti, their claws tangling in a moment so human it goes viral before the plates are cleared. The Admiral's silence isn't just tactical, it's the sound of a paradigm shattering, because Elias hasn't just proven Earth's food is safe, he's proven it's irresistible. When the final course, a chocolate fondue fountain, sends 2 armored lieutenants into a bidding war over the last strawberry, Krell doesn't bark an order. He reaches slowly for the untouched slice of pecan pie beside his claw. The gesture is small, the concession is galactic. The explosion rocks the 3rd arrondissement at dawn, a blast of plasma fire so precise it turns La Maison du Croissant to ash without cracking a single neighboring window. By sunrise, the footage spreads across the galaxy faster than warp traffic. Blackened pastry shells, a weeping baker cradling half-melted steel mixing bowls, and the scrawled Zorathian battle runes still smoking on the cobblestones. Hardliners from the Dominion's 7th Battalion claim responsibility before the embers cool. No off-world delicacies will corrupt our purity, their communique snarls. Elias doesn't send condolences, he sends cameras. The Interstellar feeds catch him striding through the wreckage in full diplomatic regalia, boots crunching on carbonized butter. He pauses beside a child's lunchbox, charred but unopened, its cartoon alien still smiling under soot. Without a word, he flips the lid. Inside, one perfect pain au chocolat, saved by a little girl who hid it when the alarm screamed. Elias lifts it gently, the pastry gleaming under the spotlights, and the galaxy holds its breath. "This," he says, voice quiet as a detonation countdown, "is what they're afraid of." The close-up is brutal, flaky layers dissolving on his tongue, the audible crunch echoing across a million view screens, but the masterstroke comes next. Elias turns to a cluster of Zorathian grunts stationed nearby, their weapons slack. "Tell me," he murmurs, brushing crumbs from his sleeve, "when's the last time your commanders let you taste something just because it made you happy?" The troops don't answer, they don't need to. The way their claws twitch toward the lunchbox says everything. On the Invictus, Krell watches the mutiny unfold in real time. His own bridge officers, warriors who have followed him through 100 orbital bombardments, are staring at the ruined bakery with something worse than anger. It's betrayal. Their comms chatter, meant to be private, leaks like syrup through the fleet. My hatchlings ask about Earth's bread gifts every transmission. You saw the scans. Their food has no neurotoxins. Admiral burned a bakery while my nest mates chew ration paste. Elias doesn't demand justice. He just orders another shipment of flour diverted to the Zorathian border outposts labeled for the troops in their own battle glyphs. The crates vanish before High Command can intercept them. That night, across 500 warships, warriors sneak portions to their bunks, not because they trust humans. Because for the first time in their lives, they want something more than orders. The memory hits Krell like a stray round to the chest, sudden, violent, stealing his breath. One moment, he's the indomitable admiral, claws dug into the negotiation table. The next, he's a hatchling again, ribs pressing against his carapace, standing in the reeking chow line of the Dominion's famine camps. The holographic ration bars in his claws flicker, replaced by the weight of something warm, something soft. A cupcake. Pink frosting swirls under the Invictus' harsh lights, identical to the one he'd glimpsed through the plexiglass of a luxury transport decades ago. Back when the elite rolled past starving children, their bellies full of imported delicacies. His mandibles twitch. The scent of vanilla triggers something primal, a memory of pressing his face against that transport's window, watching a Zorathian legislator's pup lick frosting from her claws. The hunger that followed wasn't just for food. It was for the arrogance of eating something so unnecessary, so wasteful, while his nestmates chewed on boiled leather to survive. Why, Krell growls, the words scraping his throat raw. Give us this now. Elias doesn't flinch at the Admiral's cracked voice. He leans forward, pushing the cupcake closer until its shadow touches Krell's battle wrist. Because warships run on fuel, he says quietly, but empires. His fingertip smears a streak of frosting across the day, to slate showing Zorath Prime's famine stats. These run on full stomachs. The bridge watches frozen as their admiral's armor finally fractures. Not from a blade or a bomb, from a memory of his sire's last words before he starved to death in a trench. Conquer them all, son. Then ask why we had to. Krell's claws hover over the cupcake, trembling, not with rage, with realization. The Dominion's greatness was built on a lie, that strength meant suffering. That to want was weakness, but here's the truth, sticky and sweet and undeniable. Hunger doesn't forge conquerors, it forges desperation. And as Krell finally takes the bite, frosting clinging to his fangs, the taste exploding across his tongue like a supernova, the last chains of dogma snap. His officers see it, the way his spines droop, the way his voice, when it comes, is barely a whisper. My nest brother, he stole a fruit once, they executed him for stealing. Elias doesn't offer pity, he offers a napkin. And how many worlds did the Dominion lose because it was too busy punishing hunger to feed it? The silence isn't just shock. It's the sound of 100 warriors recalibrating their entire existence. Because if their admiral, their living wrath, can crumble over sugar and flour, what does that make the empire they've bled for? Outside the viewports, Earth spins on, oblivious, its bakeries still warm, its ovens still humming. A world that feeds its enemies is either foolish or fearless. Krell's next words aren't a surrender, they're a detonation. The Invictus hydroponics bay. He meets Elias' gaze, claws leaving gouges in the table. You will teach us. The first mutiny begins with a single powdered donut. One of Krell's junior engineers, her carapace still streaked with engine grease, sneaks it from the human delegation's dessert cart, hiding the pastry in her tool belt like contraband. By the time she's caught, the sugar's already on her claws, the evidence smeared across her mandibles. The bridge crew freezes, expecting plasma fire to cut her down. Instead, the engineer does something no Zorathian has ever dared in front of superiors. She moans, a low, shuddering sound of pleasure that ripples through the ranks like chain lightning. Krell's enforcers move to arrest her, but the crowd of warriors parts and keeps parting, not out of fear, out of hunger, a medic steps forward, his scanner still clutched in one claw, the same medic who days ago would have executed a comrade for such weakness. Now he extends an open palm. "Let me taste," he rasps. The engineer breaks the donut in half. By noon, half the Invictus lower decks are bartering ration packs for smuggled human desserts. A gunnery sergeant trades his plasma sidearm for a box of macarons. A navigation officer offers her combat stims in exchange for a single cupcake recipe scrawled on recycled munitions paper. The ship's AI, programmed to report insubordination, instead logs a surge in unauthorized replicator use attempts to recreate caramel, failed batches of dough, desperate queries about why human flour behaves like live ordnance. When Krell storms the mess hall, he finds his warriors not sharpening blades but kneading. Their claws, built for shredding armor, fumble with rolling pins salvaged from scrap metal. The air reeks of burning sugar and something far more dangerous: laughter. Elias leans against the doorway, arms crossed, watching an 8-foot-tall Zorathian berserker carefully pipe frosting onto a cookie shaped like the Dominion emblem. "You've infected them," Krell snarls, his claws flexing toward his sidearm. Elias doesn't deny it. He tilts his head toward the berserker, who's now licking frosting from his own battle claws with a reverence usually reserved for sacred texts. "No," Elias corrects softly, "we liberated them." A commotion erupts near the ovens, a grunt. His carapace, still dented from the Andari campaign, has crammed an entire jelly donut into his maw. The filling bursts, dripping down his chin, and for a heartbeat, the room holds its breath. Then the warrior does something no combat drone or torture chamber could have ever extracted. He weeps. Not from pain, from the sheer, overwhelming realization that joy exists, and his people have been starving for it longer than they've starved for food. Krell's pistol clatters to the floor, not in surrender, in dawning horror, because he finally understands the humans in game. This wasn't about bribing the Dominion with treats. It was about proving, bite by bite, that their empire was built on a starvation they never even knew they had. The Desert Accord is signed not in ink, but in whipped cream and powdered sugar. Krell's claws dent the ceremonial parchment as he scrawls his name, not with the flourish of a conqueror, but the precision of a starving man counting ration portions. The terms glow holographically above the table: Earth's agricultural tech for Dominion withdrawal, human nutritionists for Zorathian hydroponics, and here the Admiral's mandibles twitch: quarterly cultural exchanges. Galactic bake-off, Elias reads aloud, smirking as he slides the dessert platter forward. Article 7, subsection 3. Participants may substitute up to 30% of wheat flour with ground crickets for traditional texture. The bridge crew erupts in something between a cheer and a battle cry. Warriors who weeks ago would have glassed cities over a tactical slight now argue over whether caramel pairs better with grub meal or roasted scarab shells. Krell watches them with an expression Elias can't quite place: not anger, not approval, but the dawning realization that his empire's greatest weakness wasn't military. It was culinary. Then the Admiral does the unthinkable. He reaches across the table, not for his sidearm, but for the piping bag. His first attempt at frosting resembles a plasma scorch mark. His second, a wobbly but unmistakable peace symbol. The human delegation bursts into applause, not the polite kind for nervous dignitaries, but the roaring, foot-stamping ovation usually reserved for championship goals. A Zorathian lieutenant, the same one who'd threatened to dissect Elias during first contact, suddenly grabs a rolling pin and bellows, "Someone get me gog root extract." "I'm making striped quasas." The tension doesn't just dissolve, it ferments into something richer, stranger, a shared language where battalions once stood. Later, historians will debate whether the turning point was the Accord's agricultural clauses or the moment Admiral Krell, Supreme Commander of the Dominion Armada, accidentally inhaled powdered sugar and sneezed fire across 3 diplomatic aides. But the security footage tells the real story. Hardened warriors from both species, doubled over with laughter, frosting smeared on armor and suits alike. Not because the war was over, because they'd finally found something better to fight for. The frosting on the treaty cakes hasn't even set when the first plasma bolt sears through the observation deck's viewport. The blast catches a tiered chocolate ganache tower mid-collapse, molten cocoa spraying like shrapnel as Zorathian hardliners in blackened armor storm the buffet line. Traitor, their leader snarls, his rifle leveled at Krell's thorax, but Elias is already moving. He yanks the Admiral backward by his dorsal spines, using the momentum to topple a three-tiered dessert trolley between them. The impact sends a tidal wave of buttercream and fondant crashing into the assassins, their plasma shots liquefying raspberry filling instead of rib cages. Krell's mandibles click in disbelief as he wipes meringue from his ocular implants. This is your tactical response. Elias flips a butter knife into his palm, its edge gleaming with the same polished precision as his grin. Admiral, please, sugar is highly combustible. On cue, a stray plasma bolt ignites the trolley's sprinkles cache, the ensuing rainbow-colored fireball engulfing two attackers in a conflagration that smells suspiciously of caramelized sugar. What follows isn't just a firefight, it's a masterclass in improvised pastry warfare. Elias ducks a vibroblade swing and counters with a perfectly aimed macaron to the attacker's nasal vents. The almond flour triggers a sneezing fit so violent the Zorathian impales himself on his own weapon. Krell, meanwhile, repurposes a frozen quasar as a throwing star, its flaky layers shattering against a hardliner's helmet like shrapnel. They fight back-to-back, blaster bolts and butter knives flashing in synchrony, their footing precarious on a floor slick with chocolate sauce and spent shell casings. The hardliners never stood a chance, not because the desserts were weapons, but because they were distractions. Every missed shot, every fumbled reload, every split-second hesitation comes from warriors whose eyes keep darting to the smoldering wreckage of what might have been their first taste of real joy. When the last assassin falls, his claw outstretched toward a half-melted eclair, Elias doesn't gloat. He nudges the pastry toward the dying warrior with his boot. Here, he murmurs, something to think about in the afterlife. Krell watches the light leave the soldier's eyes, first rage, then confusion, then a flicker of something soft as his mandibles close around the eclair. The Admiral exhales through his thoracic vents, his weapon lowering. Your species, he mutters, flicking whipped cream from his forearm plating, fights like confectioners. Elias holsters his butter knife. And yours, he counters, nodding to the assassins' bodies, dies like starving men. The observation deck falls silent save for the drip of melting frosting and the distant klaxon of approaching medics. Somewhere beneath them, Earth keeps spinning, its ovens still warm, its kitchens still humming, unafraid, unbroken, layered defenses indeed. The sugar storm begins with a single misaligned replicator. One of Krell's junior technicians, desperate to recreate the flaky perfection of a human quasar, overloads the Invictus food synth with 12 times the recommended butter substitute. The resulting explosion coats the entire engineering deck in what can only be described as edible shrapnel layers of half-baked pastry, fused to control panels like culinary barnacles. Alarms blare as the ship's AI reports catastrophic malfunctions in 17 systems, all clogged with caramelized debris. Elias doesn't even try to hide his grin. Oops, he murmurs, watching the chaos unfold on the bridge monitors. Guess your tech wasn't rated for puff pastry. Krell's spines bristle, but before he can roar an order, another alert chimes, this time from the starboard hangar. A platoon of Zorathian shock troopers, left unsupervised near a shipment of tiramisu, have short-circuited their exosuits by attempting to test for structural integrity with their faces. What follows isn't warfare, it's culinary sabotage on a galactic scale. Earth's chefs unleashed with full access to Dominion replicators, weaponized desert physics with terrifying creativity. A battalion's worth of chocolate mousse, whipped to peak viscosity, jams turret rotations like edible cement. Tres leches cakes, engineered for maximum absorption, drown sensor arrays in sweetened milk. And the parfaits layered so precisely in zero gravity that they form crystalline sugar asteroids in the ventilation shafts. Krell surveys the sticky carnage from the command throne, his clawed fingers drumming on an armrest now encrusted with hardened frosting. "Your people," he growls, "fight like pastry terrorists." Elias, busy scraping Zabaglini off a navigation console, shrugs. "You wanted volume, Admiral. We delivered mouthfeel." The final blow comes not from a bomb but a baklava. The ship's lead scientist, mid-rant about unacceptable viscosity thresholds, accidentally inhales a cloud of airborne phyllo flakes. His ensuing sneeze, a biological detonation of honey and crushed pistachios, triggers the emergency containment fields, sealing the entire research wing in a cocoon of syrup and shredded dough. Silence falls. The bridge crew stares at their ruined consoles, then at the human delegation, then at the half-eaten dessert trays still drifting lazily in the artificial gravity. Elias wipes his hands on his apron and extends a spoon to Krell. "So, about those agricultural treaties," the Admiral snatches the utensil, not in surrender. In appreciation, this, he declares, licking raspberry coulis from his battle claws, is acceptable. Somewhere below, Earth's bakers receive a standing ovation and a sudden surge in military R&D funding. The throne room smells like vanilla and subversion. Krell's coronation ceremony should have been a blood-right swords dipped in the still warm ichor of his rivals, oaths sworn over the shattered hulls of rebel ships. Instead, the Dominion's new emperor kneels beneath a chandelier dripping with spun sugar, his battle-crowned head bowed as the high priest anoints him not with oil but creme pâtissière. The golden custard oozes down his scarred carapace, gluing his ceremonial cape to his dorsal spines. By the ancestors' recipe, the priest intones, smearing a dollop across Krell's brow. "You are bound to nourish as once you conquered." A crowd of warlords and fleet commanders should be seething. Instead, their mandibles click in hungry unison, their claws twitching toward the dessert towers lining the aisles. Because Krell didn't just win the throne, he bribed his way there. Every dissenting voice had been neutralized not with assassins but amaretto tiramisu. The last holdout, Admiral Vance, held out for precisely 36 hours before a care package from Earth arrived at his flagship, a 3-tiered Black Forest Gateau, delivered with a note, "Congratulations on your promotion. P.S. The cherries are soaked in human bourbon." Vrax's surrender transmission featured visible crumbs on his uniform. Now, as Krell rises, custard glistening like molten armor, he does the unthinkable. He licks his claws clean. The gesture is obscene in Zorathian high culture, a deliberate desecration of centuries-old austerity rituals. Tradition, he declares, frosting still clinging to his mandibles, is adaptable. The gasp from the assembled nobility is drowned out by the thunderous clatter of 1,000 armored warriors dropping their ceremonial daggers to grab dessert plates. Elias watches from the shadows, his communicator buzzing with a message from Earth's Trade Directorate. He doesn't need to read it. He already knows the terms: open bakeries on 12 Dominion core worlds, recipe archives exchanged for warp lane access, and his personal favorite, a clause requiring all future peace treaties to be notarized over profiteroles. As the crowd erupts into what can only be described as a sugar-fueled coup, Elias leans toward the nearest Zorathian bureaucrat and whispers, "Next step, trade talks with the pastry pact." The reaction is instantaneous. A spice minister faints into a mousse fountain. A Starfleet Commodore accidentally activates his emergency beacon while reaching for a cannoli. And Krell, the newly crowned emperor of the most militarized empire in known space, picks up the ceremonial piping bag meant for signing edicts and begins frosting his own coronation cake. The message is clear: the galaxy's axis of power hasn't just shifted, it's been glazed. Somewhere on Earth, a grandmother adjusts her oven mitts and nods. Right on schedule, the first interstellar bakery opens on Zorath Prime, not with a ribbon cutting, but with a siege. Former warlords in flour-dusted aprons knead dough behind blast shields as hungry civilians press against the force fields, their claws leaving smears on the transparent barriers. The scent alone, warm yeast caramelizing sugar, something their biology recognizes as nourishment, even if their language has no word for meringue, is enough to make hardened shock troops whimper. The head baker, a human grandmother from Barcelona with a neural implant translating her curses into Zorathian, slams her rolling pin onto the counter. "You want bread," she shouts at the crowd, "then line up like civilized people." Krell watches the surveillance feeds from orbit, his throne room silent save for the crunch of a biscotti between his mandibles. On screen, a scarred veteran from his own personal guard, a warrior who once executed prisoners for flinching, now holds the door open for hatchlings, his armored shoulders dusted with powdered sugar. This, the Admiral growls, gesturing to the chaos, is how empires die. Elias, lounging in the observation chair beside him, doesn't argue. He just slides a data slate across the table. The numbers glow: caloric intake spikes, riot rates plummeting, birth weights increasing in districts with bakeries. "Funny thing about hungry people," he murmurs. Once they know what full feels like, they stop saluting flags and start asking questions. The cookie appears without warning. A tiny hand, its claws still soft with youth, extends toward Krell's armored knee. The child, half Zorathian, half human, her frilled ears peeking through a mop of curls, doesn't cower. She wiggles the treat impatiently. "You gotta bite it," she insists, as if explaining orbital mechanics to a dullard. The bridge crew freezes. Their emperor, the butcher of Caliban sector, the conqueror who glassed worlds for glancing at his fleet wrong, hesitates. Then, with a sound like a rusted vault opening, Krell's mandibles part. The cookie cracks between his fangs, the sound absurdly loud in the silent throne room. Cinnamon, nutmeg, a hint of citrus, flavors his species never evolved to crave, yet now demand. His spines droop just slightly. Elias doesn't smile. He picks a crumb off the Admiral's ceremonial sash and flicks it away. "You thought we were trading recipes," he says softly. "But we were always trading revolutions." Outside, the bakery's force fields drop. The crowd surges forward, not with claws bared, but with coins clutched in outstretched hands. The currency isn't Dominion credits or Earth crypto. It's scraps of old armor, hand-woven textiles, handwritten promises of labor, barter born not from poverty but from trust. Krell's throat works. The cookie is gone, but the taste lingers, not just on his tongue, but in the quiet realization that his empire's walls were never fortified against bombs. They were fortified against this, the terrifying, delicious truth that strength isn't taken, it's shared. In the corner of the feed, the little girl tugs on the scarred veteran's claw. "Mister," she whispers, "can we make cupcakes next?" And the warrior, his battle-worn face softening in a way no combat drone could ever compute, nods. Somewhere on Earth, a wheat field sways in the wind, unarmed, unafraid, irresistible. The teacups steam between them, their delicate porcelain clinking against Krell's battle-worn claws. Around them, the terraformed valleys of Zorathia sprawl, once barren wastelands now quilted with golden wheat and orchards heavy with fruit. Elias leans back in his chair, sunlight dappling his laugh lines as he nudges the eclair toward Krell. "Funny how things turn out," he muses, watching the former admiral, now planetary governor, dab at the chocolate glaze with unexpected delicacy. All those dreadnoughts, all those doomsday protocols, and the thing that finally brought your empire to its knees was pastry cream. Krell's chortle rattles the teacups, a sound that once made entire battalions flinch. Now it draws giggles from a gaggle of hybrid hatchlings playing in the garden, their human Zorathian features smeared with jam. "You misunderstand, diplomat," he rumbles, splitting the eclair with ceremonial precision. "You didn't defeat us with desserts, you revealed us." His claw traces the rim of his cup, the gesture almost contemplative. "We were a species that built monuments to starvation, called it discipline." The wind carries the scent of baking bread from the open kitchen windows, where former Starfleet engineers argue over sourdough starters. Elias watches a young apprentice, her carapace still soft with youth, carefully pipe frosting onto a cake shaped like the old Dominion emblem. Only now, the battle axes have been replaced with sheaves of grain. "And what do you call it now?" Krell's mandibles part, not for a bite, but for the unfamiliar weight of the truth. "A waste," he admits. The eclair's custard oozes onto his claw, rich and golden as the fields beyond. "All those centuries, all those wars, and we never once asked why we hungered." In the distance, a starship streaks across the lavender sky, not a warship, but a freighter laden with flour and sugar, its hull painted with the sigil of the new Galactic Culinary Accord. Elias raises his fork, not in toast but in quiet triumph. The sweetness on his tongue isn't just sugar, it's history. Krell's chuckle is softer now, edged with something like gratitude. "You humans," he grunts, licking pastry cream from his claws, "always knew the best way to conquer a man's heart was through his stomach." Elias winks. "Who said anything about conquering?" He nods to the hatchlings, now trading crumbs with the baker's grandchildren. "We just fed you." And in that moment, under a sun that once scorched only deserts, the last bite tastes like a beginning.